Hello, fifth graders, and happy Friday. We talked about dividing decimals by whole numbers yesterday. Today we're going to continue talking about division with decimals and write remainders as decimals. I know you're going to do an awesome job, and so does Mr. Smiles. Let's dive right into our video. Look at problem 1a. Alexei had 3 candy bars. He let 4 friends share the candy bars evenly. How many candy bars did each friend receive? What operation do I need to solve this problem? This is a division problem. What's being split up in this problem? 3 candy bars are being split up. So which division sentence would I use? I would write 3 divided by 4. I know that I can write 3 divided by 4 as a fraction. How do I write 3 divided by 4 as a fraction? It's 3/4. Now you try one on your own. Mr. Johnson had 5 pizzas. He let 12 students share the pizzas evenly. How many pizzas did each student receive? Go ahead and solve that problem now. Mr. Johnson lets 12 students split 5 pizzas, so he's doing 5 divided by 12. The correct answer is 5/12. Now let's do a subtracting fractions problem. What is 3/5 minus 1/4? I can't subtract these fractions like they are because they don't have the same denominator. So the first thing I need to do is find the least common denominator. What is the least common denominator of 3/5 and 1/4? List your multiples and figure that out now. The least common denominator is 20. Now I need to change each fraction so that the denominator is 20. When I change 3/5 so that the denominator is 20, what's the new fraction? Well, 5 times 4 is 20, and 3 times 4 is 12. So 3/5 is equal to 12 over 20. When I change 1/4 so that the denominator is 20, what's my new fraction? Well, 4 times 5 is 20, and 1 times 5 is 5. So 1/4 is equal to 5/20. Now I can subtract 12/20 minus 5/20. What's 12/20 minus 5/20? It's 7 over 20. Now you try one. What's 5/6 minus 2/5? Find your least common denominator, create equivalent fractions, and then subtract your equivalent fractions. Go ahead and solve that problem now. The correct answer is 13/30. The least common denominator is 30. When I change 5/6, 6 times 5 is 30, and 5 times 5 is 25. When I change 2/5, 5 times 6 is 30, and 2 times 6 is 12. When I subtract 25 minus 12, I get 13 over 30. Let's do another. Draw a model to solve 1/3 divided by 5. When I'm splitting up 1/3 by 5, what do I start my model with? I start my model with 1/3. Go ahead and draw that on your paper now. How many pieces do I need to split that 1/3 into? I need to split it into 5 pieces. So how many lines do I need to draw? I need to draw 4 lines. Go ahead and do that now. I know each group is going to have 1 piece. So what fraction is my quotient? Well, there's 1 piece out of 15. The answer is 1/15. Now you try one. What's 1/5 divided by 4? Draw a model on your paper and enter the fraction in the box. The correct answer is 1/20. Make sure your work looks like mine. Now let's try another. Look at problem 4a on the next page. 5 divided by 1/4. When I'm dividing 5 by 1/4, what do I start my model with? I start my model with 5 holes. Draw 5 holes on your paper now. How many pieces do you cut each hole into? You cut each hole into 4 pieces. Cut each hole into 4 pieces by drawing 3 lines, because the denominator is 4. Now I can count the pieces to see how many 1/4 are inside of 5. What's 5 divided by 1/4? How many 1/4 are inside of 5? There are 20 1/4 inside of 5. Now you try one. What's 6 divided by 1/5? Draw a model on your paper and enter your answer in the box. 6 divided by 1/5 is 30. There are 30 1/5 inside of 6. I start my model with 6 holes and cut each into 5 pieces. Now let's do some fraction multiplication. What's 2/7 times 5/7? Remember, when I multiply fractions, I can multiply straight across. What's 2 times 5? It's 10. What's 7 times 7? It's 49. So the answer is 10 49ths. Now you try one. What's 1/5 times 2/3? Go ahead and answer that problem now. One-fifth times 2/3 is 2/15. 1 times 2 is 2, and 5 times 3 is 15. Now let's practice multiplying fractions by whole numbers. 3/4 times 7. Remember, I multiply the numerator times the whole number. What's 3 times 7? It's 21. And the denominator stays 4. This isn't my final answer. I need to change it into a mixed number. When I change 21/4 into a mixed number, using division, what's the result? Well, 4 goes into 21 5 times, with a remainder of 1. So the answer is 5 and 1/4. Now you try one. What's 2/5 times 6? Write your answer as a mixed number. The correct answer is 2 2/5. Now let's fill in our multiplication tables. Go ahead and fill in your multiples of 2. Check your multiples with mine. Now, fill in your multiples of 3 on your paper and on the computer. Check your multiples with mine. Now fill in the multiples of 4. Write them on your paper and fill them on the computer. Check your multiples with mine. Now fill in the multiples of 5. Write them on your paper and fill them in on the computer. Check your multiples with mine. Now fill in the multiples of 6. Write them on your paper and fill them in on the computer. Check your work with mine. Write the multiples of 7. Write them on your paper and fill them in on the computer. Check your work with mine. Let's do the multiples of 8. Write them on your paper and fill them in on the computer. Check your work with mine. Now let's do the multiples of 9. Write them on your paper and fill them in on the computer. Check your work with mine. You've done a great job on the warm-up part of this lesson. Now let's dive into today's content. Today we're going to learn to write remainders as decimals. Fill that in on your paper. Pierre earned $5 last week. He decided to let 4 friends split the $5. How much money did each friend receive? First, what operation would I use to solve this problem and why? Write your answer on your paper and choose the right multiple choice answer on the computer. This is a division problem because $5 is being split up. So I'm going to divide $5 into 4 groups. How many times does 4 go into 5? 4 goes into 5 one time. What's 1 times 4? It's 4. When I subtract, how many do I have left over? 1. Now, it wouldn't make sense for each person to get one remainder $1. I know that there's another way I can write $5 that would make it easier for me to split this up. I can add a decimal point and 2 zeros to my 5. Do that on your paper now. And bring the decimal straight up. If I do that, I can keep dividing. How many times does 4 go into 10? 4 goes into 10 2 times. How many times? What's 2 times 4? It's 8. What's 10 minus 8? It's 2. I can bring down my 0 to keep dividing. How many times does 4 go into 20? 4 goes into 20 5 times. What's 5 times 4? It's 20. And when I subtract, I have nothing left over, so I'm done with my division. Each friend could get $1.25. When I need to write my remainder as a decimal, I can add a decimal point and as many zeros as I need to be able to do that. Let's look at our key points. Blank represent a part of a whole, so remainders can be written as blank. Decimals go in both of those blanks. Write that on your paper now. To write a remainder as a decimal, add a decimal point and 0 after the ones place of the dividend. Once we've placed the decimal, just like yesterday, we need to bring the decimal straight up to ensure we're dividing in the correct place value. Then we can identify and put a line over the place we'll start dividing in. Then we'll follow the steps of the algorithm. First we'll divide, then we'll multiply, then we'll subtract, bring down, and repeat if necessary. Let's follow those steps to solve some problems. 36 divided by 5. 36 is my dividend and 5 is my divisor. I'm going to write the remainder as a decimal, so add a decimal point and a 0 behind the 36. And bring your decimal straight up. Now I need to decide where I'm going to start dividing. Should I start with 3 tens, 36 ones, or 360 tenths? The largest place value that I can divide in is the ones place with 36 ones. How many times does 5 go into 36? 5 goes into 36 7 times. What's 7 times 5? It's 35. When I subtract, how many do I have left over? 1. I can bring down my 0. How many times does 5 go into 10? 5 goes into 10 2 times. What's 2 times 5? It's 10. I would have no remainder, so the answer is 7 and 2 tenths. Let's do another. 47 divided by 4. I know I'm going to write my answer as a decimal, so I'm going to add the decimal point and the 0. And I'm going to bring my decimal straight up. Make sure you're doing that on your paper now. Now I need to see where I can start dividing. Can I start with 4 tens, 47 ones, or 470 tenths? Here I can start with 4 tens. How many times does 4 go into 4? It goes in 1 time. What's 1 times 4? It's 4. When I subtract, I have nothing left over. I can bring down my 7. How many times does 4 go into 7? 4 goes into 7 one time. What's 1 times 4? It's 4. When I subtract, I have 3 left over. Bring down your 0. How many times does 4 go into 30? Now I'm in the tenths place. 4 goes into 30 7 times. What's 7 times 4? It's 28. When I subtract, how many do I have left over? I have 2. I still have a remainder, so I'm going to add another 0. Remember, I can add as many zeros as I want after the decimal point without changing the value of the number. And bring that 0 down. How many times does 4 go into 20? 4 goes into 20 5 times. What's 5 times 4? It's 20. When I subtract, I have nothing left over. So now I'm finished dividing. The answer is 11 75/100. Let's do another example. What's 23 divided by 8? I know I'm going to write my remainder as a decimal, so I'm going to add a decimal point and 0 after the number, and bring that decimal point straight up. Now I need to decide where I can start dividing. Can I start at 2 tens, 23 ones, or 230 tenths? I can start at 23 ones. How many times does 8 go into 23? 8 goes into 23 2 times. What's 2 times 8? It's 16. What's 23 minus 16? It's 7, and I can bring down my 0. Now I'm in the tenths place. How many times does 8 go into 70? 8 goes into 70 8 times. What's 8 times 8? It's 64. When I subtract, how many do I have left over? Well, 10 minus 4 is 6. I'm not finished, so I need to add another 0 and bring it down. How many times does 8 go into 60? 8 goes into 60 7 times. What's 7 times 8? It's 56. When I subtract, how many do I have left over? I have 4 left over. I still have a remainder, so I can add another 0 and bring it down. How many times does 8 go into 40? 8 goes into 40 5 times. What's 5 times 8? It's 40. When I subtract, how many do I have left over? I have 0. So the answer is 2 875 thousandths. Now we have time for some practice. Remember, put a decimal point and 0 and add zeros as necessary. Let's do the first example. What's 38 divided by 4? Change that number into 38.0 and bring the decimal straight up. What's 38.0 divided by 4? Try that problem now. The correct answer is 9 5/10. Let's do another problem. What's 15 divided by 2? Add a decimal point and a 0 and bring the decimal straight up. Go ahead and solve that problem now. The correct answer is 7 5/10. Let's do another problem. What's 23 divided by 8? Add a decimal point and 3 zeros for this problem. Bring the decimal straight up. Go ahead and solve that problem now. The correct answer is 2 875 thousandths. Let's do another. What's 39 divided by 4? Add a decimal point and 2 zeros and bring the decimal straight up. Go ahead and solve that problem now. The correct answer is 9 75 hundredths. Try another. What's 33 divided by 5? Add a decimal point and 0 and bring the decimal straight up. Go ahead and solve that now. The correct answer is 6 6/10. Now solve another. What's 29 divided by 4? Add a decimal point and 2 zeros and bring the decimal straight up. The correct answer is 7 25/100. Now let's try another. What's 11 divided by 2? Add a decimal point and 0 and bring the decimal straight up. Go ahead and solve that problem now. The correct answer is 5 5/10. Try another. What's 34 divided by 4? Add a decimal point and a 0 and bring the decimal straight up. Go ahead and solve that problem now. The correct answer is 8 5/10. Now there are several more problems for you to try. Take a moment to try these problems. When you finish, check your work with mine on the screen. Take a moment to check all of your work with mine. Remember, when we write our remainders as decimals, we can add as many zeros behind the decimal as we need to. Start with 1 and add more as you need. You're going to do a great job on your exit ticket. Take your exit ticket now, then get on SAT Math. Crush it.